Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Andrew Roots. I'm the Asia Pacific Business Lead for Ephesoft and I'm based in Sydney. Now, before we get started, let me introduce you to today's co-presenters. Ashley Ross joins us from Dunedin in the deep south of New Zealand. Ashley is the Chief Information Officer of MTF Finance, a highly successful vehicle financing provider, writing over $380 million worth of business every year. MTF operates through a network of almost 400 franchises and car dealers, all of whom are shareholders. As CIO, Ashley leads a team of operational support staff, software developers, and infrastructure engineers. He's responsible for setting MTF's strategic direction for all technology platforms, thus ensuring MTF's business needs, current and future, are met. Ashley takes a hands-on approach to all major projects and initiatives and works closely with the MTF Board of Directors. Good morning, Ashley.
Morning, Andrew. Thanks.
Next up, we have Derek Brand. Derek is the CEO of Sydney-based Epicsoft Platinum partner, Future State Systems. Future State Systems, or FSS, has a unique approach to delivering professional services and engaging with its customers. You'll hear more about this later in the session. Prior to setting up FSS and seeing the light, Derek was the Australian-New Zealand Vice President for Kofax. And Derek was responsible for closing several multi-million-dollar software and services transactions with companies such as the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. Hi, Derek.
Good morning, Andy. Good morning, everybody.
And last, but by no means least, we have Patrick Kelly. Patrick is a senior consultant with Future State Systems and was the person primarily responsible for the successful deployment of the Ephesoft solution at MTF Finance. Patrick has a track record of delivering successful projects on time and on budget and has deep domain knowledge in enterprise workflow related solutions. Morning, Patrick.
Morning, Andy. Morning, everyone.
Okay, so in the next hour, we'll be sharing how MTF Finance successfully deployed an Ephesoft solution in just a few short weeks. We'll share how the platform assists MTF loans application processes and how MTF are already witnessing significant productivity gains following the implementation of their solution. We've split the session into 4 tracks. I'll kick off and provide you with a very short introduction to Ephesoft and our solutions. I'll be handing over to Ashley, who's going to share his own experiences through MTF's document automation project, past, current, and future state. We'll turn the baton over to Derek, who will spend some time discussing Future State's unique professional services engagement model and the foundations for delivering a successful project with MTF. Patrick will be providing you with a live demonstration of the solution Future State Systems delivered to MTF Finance. And then we'll wrap it all up with a Q&A session, which does remind me, please feel free to use the chat or Zoom QA panel to submit any questions you have throughout the session, and we'll do our level best to answer them at the end in the Q&A session. Okay, so let's give you a quick background on who Effiesoft is and what we do. Effiesoft is a relative newcomer to the information management arena. The company was formed in 2010 by Ike Cavas, our CEO, and we're headquartered in Laguna Hills in Southern California. We've grown rapidly since 2010, and we're now 140 people strong. And Effiesoft extended into the Asia-Pac region in March this year by setting up the APAC head office in Sydney. We've grown rapidly in this region as well, and we now have staff that are based in Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, and India, and all of whom have deep domain expertise in the intelligent capture, big data, and information management fields. We have resellers and SIs in every major country across the Asia-Pac region, and we have over 500 customers in 35 countries, including customers in Australia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asia. Incidentally, Epicsoft is a private company. We received third-party funding from Fujitsu in 2015, and in July, significant third-party funding from venture capital company Mercato Partners. So, what makes Epicsoft different to other capture and data mining providers? We believe that Transact, our intelligent capture solution, is the market leader of a new generation of intelligent capture, or Capture 2.0 providers. And why is this? Firstly, as I intimated earlier, we ensured Transact was designed from the ground up to be cloud and multi-tenant ready, to be thin client-based and web browser independent. Our platform supports both Microsoft and Linux operating system environments, and Effiesoft leverages industry standard RESTful APIs to integrate quickly with our clients' third-party software solutions. Our customers can capture and enable their existing applications or devices, making document processing seamless and transparent to users, thus avoiding the requirement for staff to learn a new platform. But underpinning all of this is our patented analytics machine learning engine, which views documents holistically using dimensional analysis to go beyond basic text mining or pattern matching. Transact learns and extracts meaning from text fields, tables, and paragraphs within a document. Transact focuses on accurate extraction and providing valid, clean data, and it gets smarter as it learns. This technology provides immense value as its unstructured to structured approach provides automation and efficiencies, reduces implementation and development cycles, reduces processing times, and the number of staff required to operate the system. The platform's easily scalable. So what are the key elements which differentiates Ephesoft from the old capture vendors? Well, Ephesoft Transact can run on-premise in an organization's preferred private cloud environment, or Ephesoft can host your requirements either in our own Azure private or public cloud platform, depending on your needs. Furthermore, Ephesoft's approach differs to the legacy vendors because we don't limit the client's environment by the number of images or pages they can ingest. Our clients have the capability to classify as many documents as they wish and extract as few or as many data fields from documents as required. And we don't license our software in the traditional old way of doing things on a perpetual basis. We offer our software on a 1, 3, or 5-year subscription model, which obviously helps customers leverage their operating rather than capital expenditure. So we're going to cover this in a bit more detail in the demonstration a bit later on. Well, what is the typical intelligent capture process? With Transact, our clients have the ability to ingest their data through a range of channels. The traditional methods using scanners or multifunction devices, digital information via email, EDI, and web forms, and via mobile devices such as phones and tablets. One of Transact's key strengths is its machine learning capabilities. It learns what the different document types are very quickly, and I'm sure you'll hear from my fellow panelists shortly, was a key enabler in enabling MTF to go into production so quickly. And once Transact has classified the different document types, it will then extract as much or as little information as the user requires. Remember, no limitations to the number of fields that it can extract. Transact's open architecture and ease of integration enables an operator to quickly validate data by leveraging database lookups to accelerate processing times. And then Transact can populate the metadata and document images in content management systems like Objective, FileNet, SharePoint, and the like, or ERP systems such as SAP, Oracle, Infor, NetSuite, and BPM tools such as K2, Pega. And more typically nowadays, robotic process automation tools such as Blue Prism, UiPath, and the like. As I mentioned earlier, we have over 500 customers in 35 countries, including Australia, New Zealand, and Southeast Asia. And this is a list of our current global some of our current global customers. So we have two platforms focused on an organization's unstructured data needs. Ephesoft Insight, on the right of this circle, enables companies to rapidly mine millions of documents and images by crawling content repositories and other network storage. By automatically classifying documents and extracting data using Ephesoft's patented machine learning algorithms, Insight transforms unstructured data from documents into structured, correlated data sets and provides feature-rich data mining and dashboard tools for analysis. For analysis. That was easy for me to say. Financial services institutions, for instance, are improving their customer intelligence, combating fraud, and meeting regulatory requirements by analyzing massive volumes of electronic documents using Ephesoft Insight. If you're interested to hear more about the product, please let us know afterwards, and we'll be happy to arrange a separate session for you. Ephesoft Transact, here on the left, extracts meaning based on information in an organization on a transactional basis. I've already covered Ephesoft Transact and what we believe differentiates Transact from some of the other products on the market. But let's cover off some example Transact use cases. We have the well-trodden path of invoice processing, which may well be part of an accounts payable or accounts receivable process. Digitizing invoices, purchase orders, receipts, and leveraging the platform to extract header and line item data. And we can now provide real value in leveraging our machine learning capabilities to do full table extraction. So clients like Sydney-based Ally Pinnacle are using Ephesoft software to support these processes by integrating Transact with their Infor ERP platform. It's also worth noting that Derek's team at Future State Systems have developed a solution which incorporates Transact for remittance and sales order processing, and I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you about that after this session. We have a US Tier 1 bank, which has to remain nameless, sadly, that leverages our Epicsoft Transact and our mobile SDK as part of their client-facing mortgage processing initiatives, processing millions of applications per year. They were an open text Captiva customer who, like MTF, chose to move away from the legacy platform provider to a modern alternative in Ephesoft Transact. I'd like to take this opportunity to also point out that our approach to licensing our mobile SDK differs from our competitors. We view our mobile offering as just an enabler or another channel to ingest documents and data. So unlike our competitors, we don't charge our clients twice for this privilege. Please feel free to go and check out the tool and get a demo copy from the Apple or Google stores. The Department of Communities in Perth, Western Australia, are using Transact to digitise communications between it, their tenants, and third-party software providers. Inbound documents include letters, tenancy agreements, and contracts. The documents are identified, key metadata from the documents matched using database lookups against key data residing in the document's HP content management system to verify the data received is valid. Many thousands of documents have been saved in searchable PDF format and stored in the content management system to assist with supporting the department's ongoing compliance requirements. I have a number of other talk tracks that I could cover off here, but conscious of time, what I'm thinking about doing now is I'd like to hand over to Ashley. Let's hear from a real-life Epicsoft customer. Let's talk about the experience that Ashley had by using our platform. Over to you, Ashley.
Thanks, Andrew, and good morning, everyone. As Andrew mentioned, I'm CIO of Motor Trade Finance, or MTF Finance, as we have rebranded to. I've been in IT for over 25 years, starting off in an operational background, moving through various roles and now into management. We'll move on to the next slide, Andrew. Thank you. Okay, MTF Finance, we're a Dunedin-based company. Started in 1970 by accountants for car dealers. An interesting thing about our operation, all of our originators, who cover both our car dealers and our franchises, are also our shareholders. Any of you that work in a shareholder company where the shareholders are operational know the additional interest that comes from having your users as also your owners. We offer a recourse finance product, which means that our originators take more of the risk and more of the responsibility for the loan in order to get more of the profit. For example, they look after their own arrears network. So that means that we as MTF Support Office run a fairly lean operation of 65 staff looking over a loan book of almost $800 million. We currently process around 4,000 loans per month, which is double the volume of 6 years ago when I started. And each loan may have up to 50 pages of documentation. You can imagine some of the issues that you can face with compliance requirements around documentation and chasing it up. Move on to the next slide. Thanks, Andrew. Little bit of information about our past. Several years ago, we identified the need for a document management system. So after a vendor selection process, we chose IBM with their FileNet product. In turn, IBM recommended a vendor partner to help us with the implementation and also a document capture product to help with the ingestion into FileNet. It was a long drawn out process and we had a number of issues with the partner that was involved and also with the capture product. However, FileNet itself was more than up to the task we were using for it. So around 12 months ago, we made the decision to re-implement the FileNet using IBM professional services themselves and to drop the document capture system, and we reverted to manual filing. So we took on a temporary staff person who got emails from all of our originators and sat there and manually filed them into FileNet through one of our website portals. As you can imagine, that's not a great job and had a fairly high turnover. We move on to our next slide. Earlier this year, myself and a colleague were at a fintech conference in the US, and one of the presenters was Effiesoft. That looked like it was going to answer exactly what our requirements were, so we engaged with them, and as timing had it, they had just opened a Sydney office, so we were put in touch with Andrew. As you can understand from our previous issues, we were a little wary of using vendor partners, but after Andrew talked fairly hard, we agreed to try future state systems. We started that process in May. The product, the Ephesoft product itself, was ready in 6 weeks. We had some internal development that we still needed to do, so within 3 months we had the product up and running. The impact from day one was significant. We freed up 75% of our resource, allowing them to move on to doing other tasks to support the business and the compliance team in particular. The majority of documents were automatically sent into FileNet, so we were doing exception processing only. Even those exception processing, in order for the resource to identify that document, categorize it and file it, was considerably faster using the Effiesoft portal than it was manually. Next slide, thanks, Andrew. So where are we at today? As I said, the impact from day one was significant. We now have 75% more of that resource who can do other tasks which are sorely needed. Our system pain points have been removed. We're focusing now on process improvement. Now, that's not to say that everything is running perfectly there. It's not, but the product is doing everything we need it to do. What it has done is it's allowed us to identify other pain points in other areas, which the Effiesoft product is helping us to eliminate as well. So it's very much a continuous improvement path. Future state systems has proven excellent to work with. The knowledge and technical skills have been extremely high. And they are very much now a valued partner of this business, not a vendor. What do we want to do next on our next slide? There's quite a vast opportunity we've identified having seen the capability of the product. We want to start increasing the amount of OCRing of the documents. Any of you in a finance background will understand things like proof of address for customer due diligence. We want to start reading addresses, doing fuzzy searches against our database, and recognizing that that address is in fact where the customer has said they live, and we can take it as a proof of address. That's going to eliminate a very large amount of manual work that's still going on. We want to integrate further using some of the web services available. We have effectively a portal that we've we control for our originators. We want to start building some of the Effiesoft functionality into that portal, allowing them to go have one place as effectively an electronic filing cabinet for anything they may want to do about that customer. We're going to expand into life of loan documents. At the moment, it's all about origination documents. We're going to effectively use Effiesoft and the FileNet system behind it as it should be used. And we're looking wider in the business. There's a number of other areas we've identified, obvious ones such as accounts payable, expense claims, and some less obvious ones such as information about our originators rather than about the customers that currently are in a number of systems throughout the company that we can integrate all together into the Effiesoft product. So that's been our journey. It's been interesting, but we're in a much happier place than we were 12 months ago. With that, I'd like to hand over to Derek from Future State Systems, who will tell you a bit about themselves and also do the demo.
Thank you, Ashley. It's Derek here in sunny Sydney. Andy, if you could pop to the first slide, thank you. So yes, guys, and thank you for the kind words, Ashley. So we're basically a systems integrator based in Sydney. And we established ourselves basically because we wanted to help organizations to optimize and automate their processes. So all of our work is really process centric, and it's increasingly document centric processes where we're getting involved. Thus the strong connection with Epicsoft. So we basically try and help organizations to improve their processes. We recognized early that there were basically 4 core technology platforms that would help us to do that. Some organizations already have one or all of these platforms in place. Some have none, and most have a couple of these. So the key platforms that we identified, which were going to make the biggest difference to help organizations to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of their processes, are intelligent document capture. Ephesoft, we looked at the market, and myself and my colleagues in the business have deep expertise and experience in document capture technology. And immediately upon seeing Ephesoft, we recognized that it was by far the most modern technology available. It did the job really well. It's fit for purpose. The licensing model around subscription pricing rather than big perpetual upfront pricing was very attractive to us as a partner, because it meant we could bring customers on board much more quickly and easily. And the machine learning capabilities, which are constantly improving, and we've seen a big improvement just in the relatively short time we've been involved with Ephesoft, they're an absolute game changer. So we've got a number of projects, for example, that where customers are implementing very sophisticated documents, complex documents like purchase orders, invoices, where there's massive variability in the document structures, table-based, and the machine learning from Effiesoft makes a tremendous difference in being able to very quickly automate the data capture from those complex documents. So without a doubt, the Effiesoft intelligent document capture platform was our choice for those sorts of reasons. We also typically will implement or integrate with business process management, case management platforms, increasingly robotic process automation platforms, and almost always with an existing or an implementation of a content management platform. And that's basically so that the documents can be stored at the end of the process and easily retrieved and searched. So they're the kind of best of breed platforms that we typically work with. To be honest, most of our work is in the intelligent document capture space, because most organizations are still relatively poor at managing the ingestion of documents. And this is particularly pertinent for customer onboarding. So a lot of organizations, and I know we've got some of the big banks from across Australia and New Zealand on this call, a lot of organizations have invested quite heavily in managing the internal processes once documents are received from their customers, but they're still pretty immature when it comes to automating the onboarding of those documents, the automation of the classification of the documents and the extraction of the data. You'd be amazed, in fact, at just how manual that activity typically is. Something that Andy and Ashley touched on was the delivery risk, and I mean, frankly, we're quite amazed that so many projects end in delay, failure, cost overruns, and we figured one of the best ways to differentiate ourselves in the market was to take that issue head on and really focus on removing as best we could the delivery risk for these sorts of projects. So we, as our standard engagement model, will encourage our customers to allow us to take delivery risk by doing the projects on a fixed price basis. There's probably some eyes rolling at the moment because the big systems integration companies typically charge a very hefty premium to do that, at least 30-35% uplift, because they're taking the risk. We don't do that. We basically take an honest view of how long a job is going to take us, and we don't add contingency. We just basically back ourselves. So I know when we first started talking to Ashley, that was very important because of the poor experience that he'd had in the past, or MTF had had in the past, for this type of technology. And I encourage you to talk to any systems integration partner about taking that same approach. And on the right-hand side of this slide, basically there's a very simplified view of how we go about one of these projects. The only thing I'd really like to focus on here is the recommendation of the future state. And what we try and do, and it's really based on our previous, quite wide experience, is take a look at the business problems, the business issues that are in the business today, but really try and improve the processes rather than just automate what's currently being done. So next slide, Andy, please. And my last slide, you'll be glad to know, before we get to the demo. So the MTF project, so I'm going to describe very quickly what actually happened in the implementation project. And this is really typical of all of these document capture projects, and certainly for a customer onboarding type of initiative. And we started with a half-day workshop at MTM's offices in Dunedin. And we basically reviewed all of the various document types that were required for classification. And we discovered there were about 50 unique document types that we needed to auto-classify. And we looked at, for each of those documents, what is the data, if any, that you want to extract from these documents. And that's typically how we go about all of these projects. And it's surprisingly fast how we can do this, so long as the customer has got the documents to hand and they've got some samples, we can go through that process pretty quickly. The other thing we clearly need to understand is where is the integration going to take place? And there are really two integration points in broad terms. One is, where are we ingesting the documents from? So as Andy mentioned, we can automatically ingest documents from emails and attachments to emails without people having to get involved in that process. We just basically monitor an email inbox and grab the emails as they come in, automatically identify any attachments to those documents, bring those attachments into Effiesoft, and classify and extract data from those attachments. Obviously, if in a manual world, there's an awful lot of manual intervention taking place there, and typically customers, believe it or not, are typically printing those email attachments, rescanning them, and then putting them into a system like Ephesoft. So for this particular project, all of the inbound documents were already coming in by email, so it was relatively straightforward. But for future projects, that could be scanned documents, it could be fax documents. Increasingly with other projects, customers are embedding Ephisoft's software development kit into their mobile application, and that basically turns the mobile device into a scanner. So in the world of customer onboarding, for example, a customer might have submitted 4 or 5 of their trailing documents for a loan application. There may be a couple outstanding, and you can give them the opportunity to very easily capture those documents using their mobile device from a function embedded in your app. That makes it much easier for them to capture the document. So you don't want them taking photographs because they're typically a real mess. They're blurred, they're hard to read for technology like Ephesoft and OCR. So you want to control the capture experience, and that's what the SDK does. So that's an increasing ingestion point for these sorts of projects. And obviously we also need to understand where to export. So in this case, again, it was relatively straightforward. FileNet was the document repository, and we basically needed to store the documents in FileNet, but also generate the metadata, which makes those documents easy to search for. So metadata is just data about data. So yeah, that was a half-day workshop. Patrick went to Dunedin to do that, and that was the last on-site engagement we had with MTF until the day they went live, when Patrick flew back to Dunedin just to be on site in case there were any issues. So the nice thing about these sorts of projects is they can be done remotely, and that also helps to control and reduce cost for the projects. At the end of the workshop, Patrick produced a pretty detailed scoping document, and we used that as the basis for agreeing the scope of the project, and that was added to quite a few times as we went through the project and discovered more about the documents. We then basically started configuring the solution remotely, and there are a number of different components to that. Obviously, configuring the system to auto-classify those 50 different document types, so recognize when they're ingested which document is which. There was relatively small amounts of data extraction for this project, and I think that's typical of most customer onboarding projects. You don't need to get lots and lots of data out of the documents, but we did need to get some data out of the documents. We configured the email ingestion, so we were basically listening to the email server. Every time a new document came in, we'd grab that document. And the business process for the dealers was basically that they would put the account number, the 8-digit account number, in the subject line of the email, so that before Effiesoft, a person could recognise which account this was linked to. But in the new world, we could automatically pick up that account number and link all of the documents that are attached to that email to that account number. And we also inject that account number into every document, so we store that account number with the document in FileNet, and we do that all automatically. Often in these sorts of projects, we'll do database lookups, and the reason we typically do that is to make sure that the data is valid, and it's better to do that automatically than have people get involved in that process. So in this example, we're, for example, doing a database lookup into MTF systems to find the primary account holder for any of these, for the account linked to the account number. We also do validation rules, so we can again increase the classification or extraction rates. And a simple validation rule in this example is the account number has to be 8 digits. If it isn't 8 digits, then somebody has to look at that and basically correct it. So validation rules are a crucial way to improve the straight-through processing rates for this type of technology. And finally, we built out the integration into FileNet. Now, luckily, because Transact is a modern system and it is web service enabled, it's easy to integrate to systems, but in particular for content management systems, there are a whole bunch of out-of-the-box connectors that make it almost with a GUI interface that make it very easy to map the data coming out of Ephesoft into the backend content management system. So we basically went through that process. It took us probably about 4 weeks in total to do that end to end. And throughout that process, we delivered various iterations of the system. We'd already tested them using sample documents, but obviously we wanted MTF staff to further test those. And the mechanism for testing is straightforward, because they were still running their old manual process, and we just ran in parallel to that process for a week or two. And then we deployed the solution live. Patrick was on site when we did that. No issues at all. And as part of the configuration exercise, there's an ongoing warranty for the configurations of the solution and support. So that is what we did with the MTF project, and that's also typical of what we do with any Effiesoft project. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a feel, and you'll get more of a feel for that now when Patrick shows you a demonstration. We've basically used in the demonstration one example of a customer file. It's actually probably quite light on in terms of the number of documents, because we had to obviously redact the documents, and some were difficult to redact, and therefore we have to reduce the document set. But it'll give you a good feel for what the user experience is like when a document comes into the system and the technology can't automatically classify or extract data. So Patrick, over to you.
Well, thanks very much, Derek, and good morning, everyone. So I will share my screen with everyone. So I'm going to share my desktop. So everyone should now be looking at a version of Adobe Acrobat Pro. So what we're going to do is run through like an end-to-end of a day in the life of an MTF document. So I'm going to I've got the software, the Epicsoft software, running locally on my laptop. I've got a local email server running on my laptop, and I'm basically going to email the MTF server an example document, and the MTF server is going to basically pick it up through its listener process it, classify all the documents that are contained inside that document, go on and do the data extraction, and finally do the export to downstream systems. So without any further ado, we'll just get straight into it. So I will, and I'll attach an example document that we've got here, and I'll just copy that so I can paste the account number into the subject line, and I'll basically send that document through into the system. So the document that we're dealing with, it's got 11 pages in it. So I'll just put this on full page mode. So it opens up with a loan checklist document that MTF used to basically sort of, get the sales channel to basically make sure that they're providing all the information and the documentation they need to. Follows up with a credit contract agreement that runs over a few pages. There's a direct debit agreement next in the document set. Then there is a couple of pages of an external document. So obviously all those first few documents were MTF documents. This is a external document, a vehicle sales agreement about the vehicle that's being funded by the loan. And next is we've got a asset check document. Again, so this is a lookup of a New Zealand internet trading website that basically has got the vehicle specifications that's being funded. And finally, there's a requirement for the vehicle to be insured as part of the loan agreement from MTF, and the last document in the document set is a certificate of currency. So we've emailed the document in to Epicsoft. The Epicsoft listener is basically sitting there polling the email addresses that have been configured into the system constantly and waiting for new documentation to come into the system. So I'll flip over from the document into Epicsoft itself. So there's two views of the application depending on what type of person is using the system. If you're an operator, so these are the people that are using the system day to day, reviewing classification issues with documents as they're coming into the system, making corrections if that's required, and basically just making sure that everything is flowing through the system correctly. These people have got a bunch of functions, such as the ability to basically view batches in a list of batches, to be able to open batches, to scan new documents, or to manually upload documents. And then there's a bunch of administrative functions. And so these are reserved for IT people or super users. And this allows you to configure the application. So the functions in batch class management is what we use to actually build out the MTF system. And I'll show you that as we get into the demo. There are tools for the administrator to basically check the number of instances that are running within the system and to run reports. So we might as well get going. So we have emailed that document in to the application, and I'm looking at now the administrator. We can see this flyout menu here has got the same set of menu links. So I'm logged in as an administrator. I'm looking at the batch instance management view. It's telling me from a sort of a system super user view what batch instances are running in the system and what the status of them all is. So there's obviously only one batch instance running on my local laptop. It's this one. And down here in the bottom right-hand corner, we can see the workflow that the system progresses through as it's basically processing the documents that are coming in. So it starts off by importing the data, breaking the data up into all the individual pages, then reassembling the pages into the logical documents that the system has classified, and then review document module. This is the first of, there are two exit points where an operator might become involved. This is the first one. So there might be some issue that the system has with classifying a document. It might think it's a document, but the confidence scores are below the threshold, so it basically throws up on a queue for an operator to intervene. Then once classification is complete, it'll go through to extraction. Then if there's an issue with any of the extracted data, it could pop up on a review queue again, and finally it basically processes into the export module and the data passes out the back end into downstream systems and content management repositories. So from the operator's perspective, they wouldn't be looking at that, they would be looking at this. So this is the batch list, this is the queue where they can basically pick up work to process, and there's a review queue, which is what we're looking at the moment, as well as there's a validation queue, which at the moment has got nothing in it. So the review queue has got one batch instance in it, so we'll basically open that up. And the reason that the example document has stopped at the review processing is that I artificially inflated the confidence score on the email body document to be 100%, to basically force an exception, simply so we could basically come here and have a look at this first point where the user might intervene in the system. So I'll just explain how the user interface works. So there's obviously three columns across the screen within Epicsoft. The first column is basically showing us the logical documents that the system has determined were inside the document that it got asked to process. So we can see in this particular instance that there are 7 business documents that was inside that one PDF file, and pretty much the system has got it correct. The email is the email, the loan checklist is the loan checklist, the credit agreement is the credit agreement, etc., etc. So the configuration of the system for document classification has worked, and the configuration system also for document classification, it's obviously smart enough to not just detect what type of document it is, but it's smart enough to detect when the document starts, what's the first page, you know, what are the middle pages within a document, such as say this credit contract, and what the last page looks like. So it knows then that the next page it's going to be processing will be the start of the next business document that's inside the pack. So the operator uses this screen, it's popped up, there's some issue with classification. We can notice there are some red bars and green bars on the very left edge margin of the screen. And the green bar basically means everything's fine, the system is satisfied that the document is what the document is. And the red bar basically means that there is a process that the operator has either got to change the document type to another document type because it's been misclassified, or they simply click the review button if the system got it right but wasn't totally confident, which is the case here only because of the artificial confidence score that I've set in the configuration tool. So I'm going to say I'm happy with all this. The system can continue processing. There's a little pop-up that pops up to say you're about to drop this batch instance back into the system for processing. Are you okay with that? And I'm going to say yes. And now the system's saying it automatically basically goes out and tries to find another batch instance that's waiting in the batch list queue for me to process. And again, because this is running on my laptop, there's only one batch instance. There wasn't one active at that instant, so it pops up that. So I'm going to go to the batch list, and now we can see in those few seconds, the batch instance that we processed a second ago, the classification review, has now popped up on the data validation review queue. So this is the second point where users might intervene processing a batch within the system. So there might be some issue, again, with confidence scores regarding the data that's been extracted, or it's failed some validation as an example. So we're going to process the batch again. And so again, we can see we've got the same consistent 3-column user interface. The first column is again the list of logical business documents that were within that PDF file that I emailed into the system. But now the middle pane has changed. Rather than it being the set of pages in the document, which is what we were looking at back at classification review, now we see that it's the field that we're basically extracting from each document, and the right-hand pane is the same page view that we can see. So again, we've got the red bar, green bar thing happening on the extreme left-hand margin of the page. And if I click into the account number field on this email body, there's a custom validation that we put into the system. So MTF said to us that, of course, there's no control over what the motor dealers are including when they email the documents into MTF. And so MTF said there are some critical documents that we think, should be in most document sets coming in from the dealers. And if they're not, we want you to basically flag that to us. We want you to force the batch instance into the data validation review so the operators can know, for example, in this case, the system's telling us there was no proof of address document found and there was no driver license details found. And that would basically trigger the operator within MTF to basically take some special action to review the batch instance a little more closely. For the other documents, we can see that, for example, on the loan checklist, we've extracted the account number. So that was injected into all the documents from the 8-digit number we found somewhere in the subject line of the email. And then we've populated the client number. So using the account number, we've done a fuzzy database lookup. And that's basically pulled back the client number of the prime borrower on that account, and it's dragged it into the client number field on this document and multiple other documents within this batch. So we've got the email document, we've got the loan checklist, we've got the credit contract, the direct debit. They're all following a similar pattern. Some of the other document types which aren't in this example set, will include extra data fields. So, for example, if we were extracting off a driver's license, we'd be extracting the driver license number, we'd be extracting the expiry date of the driver's license. So there are examples of other document types where there's more than just account number and client number being extracted. But for this demonstration, this is what's in the set. And so we can basically quickly review that there's only one issue, and that's this manual validation regarding the email body, regarding the lack of proof of address or lack of driver's license. So we're basically going to assume that we've done the special checks then that MTF would do if that condition arose, and everything else within the document type, within this document set we're going to be happy with. So we're about to click validate. Just before I do that, I'll point out that there are a bunch of functions sitting here on the left-hand margin of the right-hand column that allow us to do certain things such as split documents, delete documents, duplicate documents, zoom into documents, page through documents, etc., to move around the pages within that logical business document. So we're going to click on our validate link now and say, yes, we're happy with this email document. And again, this little pop-up appears that's basically saying there's nothing more to do with this batch instance. You're happy to proceed further and move on to the next batch. And we'll say, yes, we are. And we're going to click the OK button. And again, the system's in the real production world where you're basically wanting the operators to stay continuously busy within the system reviewing documents. It's going to look for a new batch instance that I can feed the operator. And because this is running locally on my laptop, there was only the one batch instance, so we can't find one. So it throws up this little warning. Otherwise, the operator would have moved directly on to the next document and they'd continue their processing. So if we go up into the administrator super user batch instance management screen, where previously we could see that there was a batch instance within the system, now it's gone out of the system. So in the seconds after clicking the OK button in that previous page, the batch instance would have dropped back into the server. The server would have picked up the workflow, would have said validation's all okay. It would have executed the export module, and that would have triggered the interface, the CMIS content management interface that would have driven the documents and the metadata down into the MTF FileNet system for storage in as a content repository. So that's effectively what the operator would see within the system. So there is other things that we can have a quick look at. So there's a bunch of reports within the application. So there's dashboard reports that basically, show you what's going through the system day by day by day. There's a bunch of throughput reports. So for example, we can say, what's gone through the system, day by day, show it to me as a bar chart, a pie chart. And so we can basically see when maybe busy days are or quieter days are in our processing window. There are some advanced reports. So there's several of those throughput reports, and they're basically all doing a similar thing. How busy is this user? How busy is this module? How busy was the system through this month, through this time period, by hour, etc. Then there's some advanced reports, and here we're sort of looking at things about classification accuracy and extraction accuracy. So if I click on the classification accuracy, and I maybe change the date widget and go submit, we can see a little chart here that's basically showing us the smaller the bubble, the better. Basically, that means they're the good guys, and the bigger the bubble, that means there's a bit more of an issue with classification accuracy with these documents. And so this is giving you some sort of insights into what the operators are experiencing, how much they're having to intervene in the classification and review process. You might discover that you've got to do some more work with training the system to recognise different versions of particular document types if they're constantly appearing on your classification accuracy reports as the standout poorer performers. Then there are similarly some reports about extraction. So extraction correction. So this is basically a report telling us, where the operator has had to intervene within the system to basically correct certain errors. And so again, it's pointing at which document types are potentially coming up in the data validation queue more often than not. And again, that might be a clue to you that maybe you need to focus some more energy and effort in refining some of the extraction rules to alleviate what the operator is having to do manually. So I might now just have a quick look at the actual configuration tool that exists within the system. So Ephesoft is 100% web-based application, and it's web-based for the operator user as well as it's web-based for the development staff. And so when you're configuring the system, you're effectively using, as a IT professional, you're using a web browser to basically construct the metadata to define the document types within the system and all the extraction rules. And as Derek said, we basically did this project with MTF as a remote exercise. So you can build out the system, and then there are export tools within Epicsoft that allows you to export what's called a batch class. And then through the MTF project, for example, at the end of every week, we do an export of the configuration. We send it to MTF. MTF imported that configuration into their test systems, and they basically then had a new version of the system to test week by week by week as the implementation was unfolding. So in the batch class area, if I click on that, we can see there's multiple batch classes. So a batch class is effectively a configuration file for a customer. And if I open up the MTF batch class, we can see that there are, in fact, 45 different document types that were configured into the MTF system. And if I expand that window, we can see all those document types. And if I pick on one, so the loan checklist, so that was the first document type we looked at. So the development process is effectively you've got to configure all the document types. You've got to train the system to do classification learning. So basically that's a very simple process of saying I'm going to tick a document type here, I'm going to upload some learn files, and effectively that's the learning process. The Epicsoft software will extract all the data out of that example document that you've fed it, and the next time it sees a document like that document, the classification engine kicks in and says, I know what that is, that's a loan checklist document. And then once you've done the classification work, you would move in to do the extraction work. And so the process here is you would define certain index fields for each document type. And for an index field, say, for example, account number, you would define key value extraction rules. So this is how we're going to be extracting the data out of for this particular field. And building out those key value extraction rules is as simple as saying, for this index field, I'm going to have one or multiple of these key value extraction rules. And the common technique is basically there's this green box, red box notion that the developer's working with. It's saying, look for the phrase account no anywhere in the page, and somewhere to the right of that phrase or regular expression, look for an 8-digit number. So this is a simple, key value extraction rule that's looking for that 8-digit number, extracting it when it finds the account number. There's test tools that you can basically use to test that the extraction is working. If I go back up here, document types. So there's test classification and test extraction. And so pretty quickly you can determine that the extraction rules are doing what you intended them to do. And then, for example, the database lookup that we used for within the MTF project. So we're saying to extract the customer number was what's called a fuzzy database lookup, and so you can figure that into the system as well. So, and then periodically, as I said, every week for MTF, we would do an export of that batch class definition. It would be imported into the MTF test server. They'd be testing it. They'd be passing real documents through it. And if they were finding any issues, we'd be addressing that in the next build, in the next export file that would have come through the following week. So that is the end of my demonstration cycle. So I will stop the screen share now, and I'll pass control back to to Andy.
Thanks very much, Patrick. Great demo, thank you. So we're obviously coming up to the hour pretty quickly now. We've had a few questions, and as I kind of figured, what we might see is most of them are actually aimed at you, Ashley. So let me just ask you a couple of them. First one, given MTF had one unsuccessful project, then followed by a successful one, what do you think were the key factors for why the second project was a success?
I think the initial product possibly could have done the job. I think it was all about the implementation partner predominantly, the knowledge of the product, how to apply it, probably partly the capability of the product, but it's all about the implementation, absolutely. I think it's Future State and Effiesoft together that have made the difference to this one.
Great, thank you. And what would your top tips, kind of following on from that, what would your top tips be if you were to go to another company, for instance, and carry out a similar project?
It's all about the process and the user requirements. So has it magically fixed everything here? No, it absolutely hasn't. The reason for that is around the complexity of what we're trying to do and the, not the lack of user requirements, but users who are just used to dealing with things and don't actually think about it on a day-to-day basis. When you change systems on them, suddenly all these little things they were doing come out of the woodwork. So probably the biggest thing I could say based on moving forward would be think very, very carefully about your document classification types. So one of the projects we'll be doing will be introducing quite a lot more document classification types to allow us to have a bit more flexibility with reporting and what we want to do on it.
Great, thank you. We've got some more coming in now. Steve Johnson, where do MTF host Epicsoft? And how many processors are being used to process what volume of documents?
We host it internally on a virtual server. It's not a hungry system, so it's basically on a private cloud. I can't off the top of my head tell you what resources allocated to it, but there's a large number of other servers on that virtual server, and it's not an overly grunty machine. It's pretty low overhead. And the documents, as I say, so probably the 4,000 loans a month, probably just under half of them are coming in with the paper documents as opposed to coming through an electronic method, and that average 30 to 35 pages per document.
Great. One from Glenn. How does it handle iterative collection of docs or documents, i.e. over several days?
That's probably a future state question. Because we process each day apart from the weekend. Patrick.
Assuming Patrick takes himself off mute. Patrick, how does it handle iterative collection of documents over several days?
Well, each distinct document that's fed into the system is processed on its own merits, basically. So Ephesoft is a pass-through application. It's not holding on to the data, beyond the export phase. It gets a partial document set over on day one. It'll process that and pass it through. If it gets another partial, document set on day two, it'll process those and pass them through. The documents, when they're exported into the backend MTF system, that backend system is aware of the total life cycle of the loan application and which documents have been submitted and which documents haven't been submitted. So if there's any sort of workflow process to be followed up, it's in the back-end application rather than the front-end Epicsoft. Epicsoft just says, I'm an engine, I'm extracting data, and I'm passing it through to the back-end as quickly as possible.
So guys, it's Derek here. So yeah, so typically for an onboarding type project, we'd integrate into some back office application which is managing a dynamic checklist. So for application type 1, 2, 3, the business rules may say you always need to collect these documents. And as we collect the documents and classify them within Effiesoft, we would be updating that system, and they'd logically be ticking the box that says, we've got this document now, we've got this document now. And that system, or we could configure it in a BPM type tool or an application, could also then be providing the status of that checklist as a portal to third parties like dealers or brokers. And it could also be sending email reminders out to the intermediaries and or the end user customers to say, we still require these documents. Could you please click this link to upload the documents for us? So we wouldn't do that inside Effiesoft, as Patrick said, but that would be configured outside of Effiesoft to automate that dynamic checklist process and reminder function.
Thanks, Derek. And one more question before we start to think about wrapping up. And I'm not sure whether this is an Ashley question or a Patrick one, but guys, do you have any stats to show how the learning has uplifted the classification from day one to today?
Patrick's probably best to answer that around the machine learning.
So we actually haven't, the learning that's within the MTF system, it's the configured document learning that I would have configured into the system when the build went through. I'm not too sure that MTF are actually using the on-the-fly machine learning functions in their system. So I don't think that there's that feedback loop being deployed for MTF, but that's obviously a function within the system. It's just not being used, I don't think, by MTF. If MTF saw that they had an issue at the moment with some sort of document misclassification, which I don't think they do, they'd probably come back to us and ask us to basically check the configuration that we built into the system and correct it.
Yeah, I think you're right, Patrick. For the type of forms we're doing, we haven't needed the machine learning, which is, I guess, why I handed over to you, because you may have other clients that you could possibly share some machine learning from.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's Derek here again. So yeah, we were getting very high classification rates from day one, so it wasn't really a relevant for this implementation.
Yeah.
And machine learning is typically more appropriate when you've got highly variable documents or document structures, and you're trying to do extraction. So we're doing an implementation at the moment, or a couple of implementations where we're using machine learning, but therefore extraction of invoice line item data, purchase order line item data, remittance processing line item data. And if you think about those sorts of use cases, what you don't want to do is have to configure the system to recognize the structure of the tables for those documents for every potential customer or partner that's sending you those documents. So we use the sort of 80-20 rule. So we'll configure business rules that will, and key value extraction and the like, that will extract out of the box, if you like, after configuration. Maybe 80% of the documents will just automatically be recognized and the data captured from the tables, and we'll use machine learning to then configure those sort of less common ones. So the operator effectively just tells the system when the document comes into review, validation. They click a few buttons and basically describe the format of that table or document to the system, and it just learns it. And it learns it very effectively, basically. So the next time that document comes in from that supplier, let's say it's an invoice, it'll recognize that without us ever doing any configuration for that particular document, and it works really well.
Thanks, Derek. And now you can see the immense value that future state systems could potentially bring to an Epicsoft solution, should you choose to take this conversation further with us, which kind of leads us straight on to the wrap up today. So firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity of thanking Ashley, Derek and Patrick for their contribution. It's been fantastic. Thank you very much, gentlemen. If you'd like a copy of this video presentation or you'd like to learn more about how we might be able to assist you and your company with improving your business processes, please don't hesitate to either contact or Derek or myself. I've put up our email addresses. Please feel free to reach out to us. I'd like to thank you all for joining this call today. We've tried to keep it as tight as we could to the hour. So thanks for your interest, and I'd like to wish you all a very good day. Thanks for coming, and we look forward to connecting with you after the session. Thank you very much.